founder of 10x10 Philanthropy.
Thanks, Kat. I've never had such a stirring introduction, so thank you so much. And thank you all for being here and being in this room. I think the first thing I want to say is we can't take for granted how fortunate we all are to be here in Adelaide, in Australia, and coming together in this space. As Kat said, 10x10 is a global movement, and I know all the cities in which we exist overseas would just love to have this experience, to have the type of conversations we're already having with each other tonight. And I'm just so energized to even be in this room and be in this space with you all. So thank you for having me and thank you for being here. And I think we're all just grateful to live in such a wonderful country. I also want to give a massive shout out to Adelaide. I have been blown away by the sense of community that exists here. It is by far and away our most successful city in Australia. And that's because the real sense of community that each of you bring. And so for those who work in government, or the amazing community you're part of. 8 years ago, I came back to Australia after having lived in London for many years and decided that I wanted to give back to my own community. I got together with a couple of like-minded mates and we decided that there were two problems we wanted to try and solve. In our generation, there's a real desire to live lives of purpose and meaning, to give back to community, to be involved in philanthropy and giving back. But everyone in our generation struggles with the same problem. They lack the time, the resources, and the infrastructure to do so in a way that's meaningful to them and makes a difference. And the other problem we wanted to try and solve is that we went out into the community and we saw so many incredible grassroots organizations founded by the heroes of our community, like you're going to hear from tonight. And that no matter where these organizations exist, whether they're in Burnside or Brixton or Brooklyn, wherever they exist, there are these heroes that exist in the grassroots level of our community doing amazing work. And all these organizations and founders struggle with the same problem. They lack the resources, the know-how, and the fundraising capability to tell people about the amazing work that they do and to raise the funds that are crucial to sustain their ongoing impact. So we decided to create a movement. Our concept, simple. We'd ask 10 people to invite 10 friends, each giving $100. It's 10 by 10 by 100, that's $10,000. We'd come together in a room just like this. We'd ask the community to go out into their own community and find 3 grassroots organizations coming up with innovative solutions to complex social problems. And we'd invite the 3 organizations to pitch to you, the audience, each for 5 minutes. There'd be 5 minutes of questions from a shark. I think tonight's shark is definitely the most high profile we've had, so I'm really looking forward to seeing the questions that she asked. And then the audience, you, to ask 5 minutes of questions. We empower the audience to decide where their money would go. Every single person that's here tonight has already given. You're all collectively part of having already contributed. There's no freeloaders in this room. We're all giving back. And then we do 2 really other important things at every 10x10 event. At the end of the event, we ask 10 people from their hands up to be part of the organizing committee for the next event, which means we're never pulling on the same pool of people. We're always growing and scaling. And then we do one more thing. We match skills with need. In this room, there are so many of you that have incredible skills that you can donate and give to these charities to help them increase their impact. We've created a marketplace where young professionals can give their skills to serve charities so that the impact we create goes beyond this night tonight and goes out into the world. So to be honest, when I started this, it was just going to be my kind of side hustle. I was going to do 2 events here in Sydney. I was going to feel good about my finance job, and like that was going to be it. But the movement took off, and about a few years, about 1 year after, actually, we started in Sydney. My friend now, Georgiadis, is here tonight. And I said, oh, dude, I don't know if you're like, all the other major cities in Australia to London, New York, Hong Kong, Canada, New Zealand. We've supported over 250 grassroots organizations. had over 12,000 individual donors, and distributed over $2.7 million to charity. Can I have some applause for that, please? I mean, that intro was good, but I still need to fill the inspo. But this shows the power of an idea, power that individuals can create in their own community. And what 10 by 10 has gone on to be has been beyond an organization that just cares about metrics of impact and sees itself as a vehicle for venture philanthropy, an organization that goes out into the community, unearths the most effective and in the next generation of Australian social change makers and social entrepreneurs, connects them with the places and it sees itself as part of being a vehicle for longer term systemic change. That isn't possible without the support of amazing generous donors and philanthropic foundations that have supported us here in Adelaide. I'd like to specifically thank the Day family who believe Jeff and me from the day one, to the Carter Foundation and the Wyatt Trust, all are part of the philanthropic generation of amazing ability to scale and leverage the impact of these social organizations. To begin, Bendigo Bank, our host tonight, and to all of you that potentially work in the corporate world, you have the opportunity, the amazing ability to connect with the kind of organizations you hear from tonight and help them increase their impact. See this as your opportunity. And finally, to government. Thank you for being here, Mr. Spears, and thank you for the role you play in service of our community. And we see ourselves as out on the front lines, identifying the next generation of amazing organizations that you're going to hear that can be part of long-term systemic change, that can be supported by our government. I served on a 10 by 10 committee. Each of you, are part of the tapestry that 10 by 10 has formed that's gone out into the world. It's because of you that we'll be able to sustain this movement and to really be a catalyst for change in our community. I genuinely believe that nights like tonight can be the catalyst for longer term systemic change, that we all have the incredible ability to be part of building a better future for ourselves and for our children and our grandchildren. That is the power of one. That is the power of 10. That is the power of community. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurie. Having participated in 2 10 by 10 committees and attended several events, I feel quite privileged to have the opportunity to be able to use this platform in joining a global community that is supporting so many worthy causes. Dr. Judy Halliday is unable to join us tonight, but in her place is Mr. Mark Hudson from the Office of the Chief Entrepreneur, representing the Minister for Innovation and Skills, the Honourable David Pizzoni. Please welcome Mr. Mark Hudson, who will highlight some important themes related to tonight's event.
Okay, thanks, Katrina, and congratulations to you, Lawrence, and all of the committee for your great work and pulling together an event such as tonight. So well done. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Ledson, and as Katrina said, this evening I'm representing the Office of the Chief Entrepreneur, which is part of the Department for Innovation and Skills, and within the portfolio of the Minister for Innovation and Skills. I'd also like to acknowledge the Honourable David Spears, Minister for Environment and Water, and Mr. Bruce Spears, Executive of Business Banking for Bendigo Bank. Also, the representatives of each of the charities that we're going to, or the not-for-profits that we're going to hear from tonight, Mr. Alan Noble, Professor David Patton, and Mr. Tim Jarvis, and the rest of the 10 by 10 project committee. So I'm just going to take a very short few minutes to talk a little bit about tonight. So tonight we're going to hear from three, I guess you could call them agents for change, with innovative approaches to big problems. And I won't speak for the government, I'll let the minister do that, but I think we'll all agree that while the government has a role to play in helping to tackle the big problems in front of us all, it can't be left to government alone. Big problems need a team approach, and the government can best work as an enabler together in partnership with innovators, researchers. And speaking of researchers, it's good to see the Chief Scientist, Carol Millen here, and the broader community working together, as I said. So I can give you a brief example of this sort of partnership and working together in my role within the Office of the Chief Entrepreneur. We support entrepreneurs with basically to help grow their startups. And there's a number of ways we do that. One of those ways is with the government's Research Commercialisation and Startup Fund, which provides significant funding to help innovative startups to grow. So within my role, I help applicants through that process and conduct some due diligence. And it just so happened that today I was working, reviewing an application from a company. I can't give you too much of the details, but I'll give you the quick sort of overview without giving away the IP. But they've got a really unique piece of equipment that they're bringing to market developing. And this piece of equipment has the potential to save huge amounts of energy used in applications such as mining, 50% or more. Not only that, but more than that, it can entirely eliminate the need for water in these processes and therefore eliminate things like tailings dams and all the problems that come with that. So it's a great example where entrepreneurs bring the innovation, often based in cutting edge research, and the government matches the investors' fund so that great ideas can become reality. So the former chief entrepreneur, Jim Wally, and we have a new chief entrepreneur, Andrew Nunn, now. The former chief entrepreneur referred to entrepreneurs as superheroes for the risks they're prepared to take as agents of change to tackle big problems and do something better. And that's not unlike the three presenters that we'll hear from tonight. So I thought on that theme, and Lawrence mentioned heroes, on that theme of superheroes, I thought a little bit about what are the characteristics of a superhero. Well, I can't talk from personal experience, but I think they're driven by purpose. There's a common theme here. They all have this driving purpose that's bigger than themselves. It's a cause for good that extends beyond their own interests and the temporary situation to leave something of value that lasts. So likewise, the people that are pitching tonight, you can expect to hear from people who are driven by a noble cause and a purpose for future generations that's beyond themselves. But here's the main point: unlike a superhero, they can't do it alone. Big problems, as I said before, need a team approach. Our presenters have a purpose and a plan, but they also need partners. So thank you to the 10x10 initiative for your role in helping great causes find great partners. So enjoy the evening, superheroes, one and all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. A key tenet of 10x10's model is that it encourages the committees of young volunteers to critically assess the charities which they choose to support. Not only that, but the charities must also be solving complex real-world problems through a creative solution that can be replicated and generate value for our communities. This is the heart of innovation, and we are very fortunate in South Australia that our government recognises and supports this. We will now break for half an hour, and when we resume, we'll hear from Mr. Bruce Spears and the Minister for Environment and Water, the Honourable David Spears. Minister Spears will then introduce our Shark for Good, the Honourable Julie Bishop, to be joined on stage by our three charity founders. You're all in for a very inspiring and informative second block of programming, and I'll see you in half an hour. acknowledge the presence of the Honourable Julie Bishop, who now joins us in the room as our guest of honour and will soon assume the role of our Shark for Good. Tonight's event is themed Stewards for the Environment. From late 2019, Australia suffered devastating bushfires, which cost lives and destroyed homes, wildlife and livelihoods. On top of that, the COVID-19 pandemic has negatively impacted our welfare. These double tragedies have reignited awareness about the importance of the natural environment for human health and well-being, leading many to reflect on the fragile human relationship with our natural environment. Our committee believes it is important to harness science for good, to achieve both social and environmental outcomes. In this section, you are going to hear from three men who are passionate about conserving our environment and who have dedicated their lives to applying science, research and technology to bringing about change. We are proud to support them in this cause as stewards for the environment. In a moment, you will hear from two more guests before our Shark for Good takes the stage. For all three charities, our Shark will introduce the speaker and invite them to pitch for 7 minutes. Each charity will hear a bell at 5 minutes and the bell again at 7 minutes, meaning their time is up. After their presentations, they will receive 5 minutes of tough but fair questioning from our Shark for Good, the Honourable Julie Bishop. Our Shark will open up the floor to you, the audience, for a further 5 minutes, where we encourage you to ask any burning questions that you might have that will help you to decide where to place your donation. There will be a bell sounded at each 5-minute interval. Now I'll introduce our next speaker. Bendigo Bank is one of 10x10 Adelaide's earliest supporters, going back to 2015 when 10x10 was first pioneered here. In successive years, Bendigo's support for 10x10 has only grown. Young Bendigo staff have themselves organised and formed a number of 10x10 Adelaide project committees and joined in others supporting numerous grassroots charities in South Australia. Bendigo's commitment to supporting 10x10 is a stellar example of how the corporate sector can support not only young people, but also grassroots initiatives to deliver impact at a local level. I would like to introduce Mr. Bruce Spears, Executive Business Banking at Bendigo Bank, who will address us shortly. Mr. Spears has held a number of senior roles in the bank since joining it in 2004. Bruce is the father of 4 children and chairman of Windmill, an Adelaide-based theatre company which creates works for children and young people. Please welcome Mr. Bruce Spears to give us the welcome address.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. Can I formally welcome you to tonight's event here at the offices of Bendigo and Adelaide Bank. Can I start by recognising that we meet tonight on the lands of the Kaurna people, the traditional owners of the Adelaide Plains, and recognise their elders past, present and emerging. We also recognise the connection they have to their community and the role that plays in sustaining their culture and the environment that we all inhabit. As Kat said, this is the 4th event that we as Bendigo and Adelaide Bank have had the privilege of hosting, and the second that I've personally had some involvement in. Until Kate had in her previous role as head of the Adelaide Community contacted me, I actually didn't have much background on 10x10, but in the time that I have been involved in a small way, it's hard not to be completely taken by the energy, the passion and the calibre of people that are involved in the committee, and this year is no exception. Clearly, putting on an event like tonight carries with it some challenges. To throw in a global pandemic just adds to that, so I'd like to congratulate all of the team that have been involved because that's a terrific effort. Jess, who has left I think now, but Jess who works with me, I'd like to recognise as well because some of you may have tried to navigate bank's processes in different forms. Sometimes that can be a bit hard, and Jess has made tonight a pretty seamless event given the COVID challenges that we have. Can also recognise a couple of our special guests, the Honourable Julie Bishop, former Foreign Minister, welcome Julie, and Mr David Spears, Honourable David Spears, who is no relation to me, but we're working on that somewhere in the background. Look, when I thought about sharing a few thoughts tonight, clearly there are more in this room, far more qualified to talk about the environmental challenges that our charities and social entrepreneurs will be talking to us about. So what I reflected on was probably the size and the scale of the problems that these social entrepreneurs are leading, and our own experience here at the bank but how tackling major problems can be addressed. And our experience really comes back to where you've already heard quite a few times tonight, which is community. Bendigo and Adelaide Bank is most well known for its community banking model. And for those that aren't aware, very simply, it's a partnership with a local community who are looking for banking services, and we provide that with them, and in turn we create value that's shared with their community. But the relevance for tonight is actually the story of how that model came about, because I think the challenges that we'll be talking and hearing about tonight resemble some of those that drove us for this really innovative model that now is in 300 or over 300 communities in Australia. For those who remember, in the late 80s, early 90s, banks were being withdrawn from rural and regional communities. And that was creating massive disruption for those communities because the absence of a banking service in those days, when the internet wasn't as prolific as it is today and mobile apps weren't in existence, the withdrawal of banking services was creating massive challenges for those rural and regional communities. There were significant protests, lots of challenges raised, but at the end of the day, it seemed a problem that was too difficult to solve. The communities of Rapunyip and Minyip, two very small towns in country Victoria, decided to not admire the problem, but instead took it upon themselves to engage with the bank to try and find a different way forward. And the outcome of that was not only a model that created an opportunity for banks to actually provide those services in those communities, but actually to share in the profits, which in turn can be invested in those communities. And over the 20 plus years that we've had that model, over $260 million has been created, which has then been invested in local community programs relevant to those communities. And it not only kept those communities sustained, but in many cases had them thrive beyond anything that might have been imagined at that time. When I reflect on how that came about, it very clearly needed leadership. And we're going to hear from three leaders tonight in their own fields who embody that drive for change that can create something very different than we have today. But the big reflection for me, and I think touched on earlier tonight, is the leaders that drive that change for the community equally need communities to drive the change. What we know is creating the change is sometimes really hard, but sustaining it is even harder. And the community engagement in that model is critical to enabling those changes to exist. So one thing I really love about the 10 by 10 community is exactly that. It brings together people that might not otherwise connect, and everyone here tonight is part of a community that will enable those charities that we'll be hearing from to drive to an outcome that hopefully benefits us all. So whether you're here tonight to hear from Hon Julie Bishop, whether it was to network, whether it was the simple novelty of being in a room with more than 10 people, which is not something we've had much of a chance to do in recent 12 months, you're all now part of a community that I think provides us the opportunity to do something special with the charities that will be talking to us tonight. So I'm looking forward to being part of that and hearing from those leaders myself. So on the topic of leaders, it's my job also now to introduce the Honourable David Spears. As I've said, there is no relation to David. So apart from his very auspicious surname, I know, I'm just making it really clear. David is the Minister for the Environment and Water and widely regarded as one of the more effective ministers in the Marshall government. Would you please join me in welcoming Mr. David Spears.
I'm going to take this off and walk around because Lawrence walked around and I don't want to be seen as some sort of stodgy politician. So, look, it's great to be here tonight, and I want to firstly begin by acknowledging that we meet tonight in the lands of the Kaurna people, and we acknowledge their special relationship with the land. And more than that, we also acknowledge the connection they have with the environment. I often say that if the environment is right for Indigenous people, for traditional owners, it's going well. And if things are going well for traditional owners, it's likely that the environment is going well as well. I want to thank Bendigo Bank tonight for hosting us. I'm glad I'm not related to Bruce, actually, because I want to hit him up for an interest rate cut afterwards, and I don't think he could do that if he was related to me, so because I borrow through Bendigo Bank. Anyway, also Julie Bishop and other distinguished guests who join us tonight, and no more so than our three charity founders, Alan Noble, Tim Jarvis and David Payton. Three men that I know personally, and I know each of their projects personally as well. And I'm They are grassroots projects, they are projects that are making a difference, and they are projects that are driven from the hearts of these men. They get their hands dirty, they're down there in the community, on the land, building networks, planting, growing, weeding. In Alan's case, he's doing the equivalent of that under the water in many cases, and I just am so in awe of people who not only talk the talk but walk the walk, and these three guys are doing exactly that. When it comes to the natural environment and the preservation of our precious environment, I strongly believe that South Australia has its house in order. We can still do lots of things better. We should continue to challenge ourselves to push the boundaries, and we will continue to do that. And everyone in this room should continue to challenge me and the current state government to do that. But I do think we are doing quite well. We lead the most ambitious and most progressive climate action agenda in Australia, and one of the most progressive in the world. We've been committed at a bipartisan level to our carbon neutrality by 2050. But incredibly importantly in South Australia, earlier in our term, about 12 months ago, we committed to a 2030 target because we felt that 2050 is too easy to sit back on our laurels and say, you know, we'll get technological solutions, we'll get there in 2048, we'll get this great solution that'll just get rid of those emissions and everything will be all right. We've set a 2030 target to have a 50% emissions reduction in our state's emissions on 2005 levels. We want that 2030 target in place so that it's a goal to action for the government, that it's a goal to action for the private sector, and they are a very important partner in that, and it's a goal to action for the broader community to do their bit and to challenge government and business to get on with it. So we've got 2030 as that important, critical interim target, and we're well on our way there, but we've got to keep on innovating, and we've got to keep on challenging ourselves when it comes to electric vehicles, when it comes to innovative carbon sequestration models, and when it comes to transitioning our agricultural economy as well. On the 1st of March, 2021, so 10 days from now, South Australia will become the first jurisdiction in the nation to ban a whole range of single-use plastics. Now, in some ways, some people say, well, banning straws, that's just symbolic. You're not going to save the dolphins and the planet by doing that. There is symbolism in that, but there is also an important signal to other South Australians, to business and to the rest of our nation that we're really serious about getting on top of plastic pollution, getting on top of our disposable lifestyle, and actually sending a powerful market signal to businesses and innovators that we want to be the place that the alternatives are made. We want to be the place that has that reputation for doing things differently. I think we've got that reputation, but again, we can't sit back, we can't wait for things to plateau, and we can't, in my view, we shouldn't be letting other states catch up. We should always have them running behind us and wanting to be like South Australia. We brought our container deposit legislation in this state in 1977. It has taken Victoria 45 years to catch up, and finally they've caught up. I hope they don't take as long to catch up with their single-use plastic ban. But I'm very proud that South Australia continues to be a place where we can show leadership. All the projects that are before us tonight are driven by private individuals, and they by and large take place on private land. That is really important from my point of view, because while South Australia has one of the largest components of any jurisdiction in the world to be held within their park system, 21% of the state, 356 parks. If you add them all together, they're the same size as the United Kingdom, but most of the state is still privately held, always will be. It's the way our society works. So we need people who own private land, have investments in private land, and have influence over private land, getting their hands dirty, committing to environmental sustainability, realizing that we can't just exploit our land for food production and fibre production on a constant basis without offsetting that intensity, building resilience into the landscape, sequestering carbon along the way, and modelling best practice behaviour. Each of the projects, 2 of them terrestrial, 1 much more marine focused, are doing exactly that. They're working on private land, using private resources. They've not necessarily come to government. As I say, I know them all, but they haven't started out coming to government. They've actually used their own capital and their own investment and their own initiative to drive these their cause for a better environment in South Australia forward. So I want to commend each project to you. Let you know that I think you can be confident that South Australia's environmental policy and leadership is heading in the right direction, but continue to challenge your leaders, challenge me, challenge the government to do better. My job now is to introduce the shark for tonight, someone who doesn't need a great deal of introduction, someone who my mum constantly says, "Oh, David, I wish I looked like her." And I'm like, "Mum, you look fine. Julie's 5 years and 4 weeks older than you, but you look good, Mum." Julie's got a reputation that precedes her. Deputy Leader of the Liberal Party in South Australia for 11 years, Australia's Foreign Minister from 2013 to 2018, someone who had immense respect at an international level, someone who has worked across our nation in social policy and economic policy and has taken Australia to the world. She represented her seat of Curtin for the best part of 2 decades in the city of Perth in Western Australia. She knows about grassroots activism, she knows about grassroots representation, but she also knows about leadership at an international level. It gives me great pleasure tonight to welcome Julie Bishop to Adelaide and to this event. And Julie, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, David, and I am delighted to be here. I was told that there are regular sightings in South Australia of great whites and Port Jacksons and bronze whalers and wobbegongs and gummies, but now you have a shark all the way from Perth. No jokes, I understand what South Australians say about Western Australians, but I come from Noongar country, the Whadjuk people, so I acknowledge that I am now on the land of the Kaurna people and I pay my respects accordingly. So I understand now that the beautiful Izzy Michelle is going to introduce our 3 contenders this evening, and then they will make their presentation. I will ask questions. Who said I was going to be fair? Where did that come into it? And then we will turn to you to get questions from you. Don't hold back. We need to find out what's at stake here. We're all about preserving our environment, and we have 3 outstanding presentations, but they need to be tested. So, Izzy, over to you.
Okay, we're ready. So my name is Isabel Michelle. I'm the charity liaison for the 10x10 Adelaide committee for this year. So I have the very great pleasure in introducing you to the 3 charity founders that you're going to hear from tonight. And this, in my opinion, is the most exciting part of the night. So get ready to get excited. First up, we have Mr. Alan Noble. Mr. Alan Noble founded AusOcean in 2017 with the mission of helping our oceans through technology. After over 3 decades of working in the private sector, he believes that technology can and should be a force for good in the world. While many non-profit organisations struggle to use technology effectively, AusOcean has adopted a technology-centric approach to solving ocean science and conservation problems. He is an electrical and electronics engineer by training and has spent his entire career working with computers and technology software, having lived and worked on several continents and founded software companies in Silicon Valley and Australia. Previously, he was head of Google Australia as head of engineering for 11 years. He is passionate about our oceans and spends every available moment in or on the water. Can you please join me in bringing up to the stage Mr. Alan Noble?
If our oceans die, our planet dies, and we die. Oceans harbour beautiful wildlife, provide a bounty of food, and regulate the global climate, sequestering up to about 1/3 of the carbon emissions produced by human activity. That's about 2 billion metric tonnes each year. And yet, we humans, we terrestrial species, suffer from a kind of ocean blindness. We're largely oblivious to the fate of our oceans. And I know tonight I'm competing with two terrestrial nonprofits, so please do keep that in mind. I was no exception. I too had ocean blindness. I learned to dive in the cold, clear waters of the Monterey Bay, California, in the late 1980s, and yes, I am that old, where I learned of the beauty of the giant kelp forests and temperate marine ecosystems. And for that, I'm very grateful, because if I had learned to dive in warmer waters, I might never have donned a 7mm thick wetsuit, and I would never have experienced the incredible diversity of those fantastic kelp forests. Too many divers shun the temperate ecosystems because all they think about are warm tropical reefs. But actually, temperate marine ecosystems host an incredible diversity of marine life, and few more so than the waters of southern Australia, the Great Southern Reef. Covering over 70,000 square kilometres, the Great Southern Reef is a network of interconnected temperate reefs along our southern continent's coastline. It's home to thousands of species, including some iconic species such as the giant Australian cuttlefish, leafy sea dragons, masses of camouflage, Australian sea lions, and migrating whales. Fueled by dense kelp forests and incredibly vibrant seagrass meadows, it drives an incredible diversity of life and productivity. It also powers the economy to the tune of about $10 billion of economic activity every year. The other amazing thing about the Great Southern Reef, which is not true of any tropical reef system anywhere in the world, including the Great Barrier Reef, I might add, is that in the Great Southern Reef, 85% of the species there are unique or endemic to that region. I mean, we should be holding up the denizens of the Great Southern Reef in the same way that we look at our koalas and our kangaroos. I mean, these are marine Australians that most of us don't even know about. Unfortunately, due to all kinds of pressures from climate change, ocean warming, overfishing, and frankly, many decades of less than stellar development, there's a lot of pressure on the Great Southern Reef. And still a lot about the Great Southern Reef we don't know. We're still discovering new species. And that's pretty remarkable. Here we are in 2021, and only recently they discovered 400 new species in the Great Australian Bight. The thing is, there's so much we don't know, but if we don't find out about it, if we don't acquire this ocean data, we won't have the information we need to set the targets and to protect it. And the fundamental problem is that ocean data and ocean technology required to collect that data is fundamentally cost prohibitive and often inaccessible. A typical sensor that, say, a marine ecologist might use will often cost several $1,000s, making that kind of technology essentially inaccessible to all but the most well-funded government researchers or academics. At AusOcean, we're changing this. Our mission is to help our oceans through technology. We believe that technology can and should be a force for good, not just building cooler products. We're not a traditional non-profit at all. In fact, I like to describe us as more like a tech startup. Technology is front and center at everything that we do. We tackle these problems by working openly. Everything we do is in the open, and specifically that means open science, open technology, open data, and open people. Open science is about making sure that everything that goes into the science can be openly replicated and is completely transparent. Open technology is about open source approaches to everything we do. Open data is about making the data accessible to everyone around the world, not just researchers. And open people is about open and collaborative approaches. By leveraging open approaches, we're dramatically lowering the cost of technology. One thing we've done is we've developed an incredibly low-cost sea service platform called the AusOcean rig. And this is really at the heart of driving the costs down quite dramatically. You'd be surprised to know that you can go to a Bunnings or a JCar and build one of these for about $600. But the really cool thing is we can get students to do that. So I'm very proud to talk about our student-led citizen science program. It's called Network Blue. Students are constructing and using these AusOcean rigs to solve all kinds of real-world problems. We're really bridging the gap between science, schools, and communities. And we're doing this in a way that's very affordable and very accessible. Only by improving our global understanding of oceans can we truly appreciate the value of our oceans and finally cure that ocean blindness. At AusOcean, we're investing in innovation technology, we're lowering costs, we're improving access, and we're removing barriers to collaborating openly. Now for the ask, I'm almost out of time. It will be an ask. For a measly $5,000, hardly anything, we can basically roll out our Network Blue program into 8 more schools. We can facilitate 8 new environmental nonprofits. We can basically train 800 students and collect 8 terabytes of valuable ocean data. Thank you very much. Testing. I'm good.
Okay, I take over from here. Well done. Hi, Alan.
Hi, Julie.
You said that your mission is to help our oceans through technology. What is the specific environmental challenge you hope to address and why?
That's a very good question. So
Thank you.
we are very partner driven. So there's not one challenge. There's essentially a number of challenges that our partners are bringing to us. I will say, I'll basically enumerate a few of the common challenges. Monitoring. There's a desperate need for more information. It could be turbidity monitoring, it could be temperature monitoring, it might be microplastics monitoring. So we're basically partnering with our nonprofits partners. So we're like a nonprofit that actually supports other nonprofits in that sense, and helping them come up with innovative tech-based solutions to their problems. So one thing we do a lot is video, and video is kind of interesting. You might think, well, video, in fact, we were showing video earlier today of the new shellfish reef off Glenelg. That was not a recording, that was live video being streamed from the seafloor off the coast of Glenelg. No smoke and mirrors here. But people think, oh, isn't video just about engagement and getting people excited? Well, it does do that, but actually video is also a wealth of information. With video, you can calculate flow, tides, you can look at turbidity. So yeah, basically all of the above. But the common theme is we look at solutions where we think technology can make a difference and technology can give us some scale. If we don't think technology can give us some kind of edge, we're not the right organisation.
Alan, what data will your program collect that's not currently being collected by other ocean research programs? And I come from WA, we have many around that massive coast. What data are you collecting that no one else is, or does that matter?
Oh, it does matter. It's not often or not always the case of a different type of data, but filling in the blanks. We have an enormously long coastline, about 22,000 kilometres, and we're really only collecting data in a few locations on this gigantic coast, on this huge continent. So we're basically trying to build a lower cost platform that means we can get many, many more data points. So we're probably collecting things that other organizations might be collecting, but we're going to do it much, much more cheaply and much more extensively. And so we plan to have a network of these AusOcean rigs floating around Australia, eventually in the thousands. There will be no other network like it.
How long will it be before we can see measurable improvements in our ocean as a result of your work?
I think that depends on what the specific goals are. For example, one of the things the South Australian government's working on is trying to identify where we can do restoration projects, shellfish restoration projects cost effectively, because it's a big ocean. And if you put it in the wrong place, you might not get the best results. We can go there ahead of time, measure turbidity, measure flows, measure temperature variations, and get a lot of data that will enable others, whether it's government or other nonprofits, to make much better decisions and hopefully more cost-effective decisions.
So how will data translate into action? Your data translate into action?
Better decision making for sure. Really, we're talking about democratizing access to the data. There's a lot of data being produced by a lot of organizations. It often resides in silos. It's hard to get it. It's certainly hard for citizens to get at it, but actually sometimes it's hard for other government departments to get at it as well. So everything we do is accessible by everyone, and that will, we believe, hopefully inform better decision making.
What more can be done by your program or the work that you're doing to influence the policies and behaviours of governments, private sector, individuals?
Yeah, well, I like to say that you can't fix what you don't measure. So by measuring more measurements, high quality measurements, cheaper measurements, and making sure that those measurements are widely understood, it will translate into just better outcomes across the board. I think it'll be, in some cases, we'll be just making a slightly smarter decision about where a project is put. Other times it might actually say, oh, this is actually not a good idea because, for example, if we build a reef in this location, it's far, the wave energy is too high and it will be very, very difficult. So it will, I think, translate into more effective, more cost-effective decisions. Hopefully that in turn will translate into, better long-term outcomes. I mean, we're trying to basically recreate a functionally extinct ecosystem. I didn't have time to talk about it, but we used to have these amazing shellfish or oyster reefs around southern. It started all the way in Perth, all the way around southern Australia, all the way up to South Wales, functionally extinct. We're trying to bring them back, but the question is, well, where do we get the biggest bang for the buck? So we can help make those decisions.
I'm a big fan of the great Thomas Sowell, the philosopher and economist from Stanford University. And
My
Thomas
alma mater.
Sowell, that's what I'm saying. Thomas Sowell has a framework for decision making, and he has 3 questions. So I'm going to ask each one of you one of his 3 questions. And the first one is, when you're making a decision, as I'll ask the audience this evening, ask yourself, compared to what? Resources are scarce. What are the other options? What else could we do? So I'm going to ask you, Alan, compared to what? What other options are there out there that we could invest our money in that would give us the desired outcome?
I thought you'd never ask. The thing is, when you compare, ask the question, compared to what? There's 2 answers I can think of. Compared to the status quo, the way we have been doing ocean science has been incredibly expensive. A turbidity sensor that starts at $1,000 US, we can probably make for $100, or maybe even do it in software, and there's no incremental cost. So compared to the status quo, we will demonstrate, I'll just say now, probably order of magnitude savings. I mean, our AusOcean rig is already about 10 times cheaper, by some accounts, 100 times cheaper than a commercially available research voice. So that's incredibly beneficial in terms of being able to do more with less. Comparing with other possibilities, it's a bit harder to compare, well, what else, where or could we choose to invest? That's a harder one for me to answer. I feel like I'd be speculating, but I do feel like wherever we invest, we choose to invest in innovation technology, we'll end up probably doing better. So choose innovation, choose technology.
Okay, that's a very passionate presentation from Alan. I've asked a few questions. Now it's over to you. We do have microphones that are roving around, or you can signal. Somewhere along the line we'll find you. The lady in the black dress, please ask your question. We have about 5 or 10 minutes of questions, 5 minutes of questions, so make it snappy.
I'm interested in the school program. You said 5,000 will get you a lot of 8s, and one of the 8s was 8 schools. How many schools are you in? What's been the outcome, and why 8?
Yeah, well, I was told I needed to quantify the ask. If I could do 80 instead of 8, I would love to, but there is also a scaling that has to happen. We started the program just before COVID hit. We got into 2 schools. We had grand plans to scale it last year, which didn't happen. We are expanding now from 2 to 8 already. We're adding 6 as we speak. A huge emphasis on regional and rural schools, so Whyalla, Mount Gambier, Yankalilla, not just metro schools and not just private schools. We are still figuring out how to scale it. I'm really actually interested in having conversations with educators and folks in policy that set curriculum. The holy grail is getting this into the SACE curriculum. That's how we scale it. I really want to have that conversation. Until then, I think we'll just continue to double the number of schools every year for the next couple of years. So 8, 16, 32.
What does your school program actually look like?
Yeah, it targets it's STEM with a few other benefits as well. You could say STEM with perhaps an outdoor education aspect as well, maybe a little bit of entrepreneurship. One of our schools is Heathfield High, which is an entrepreneurship school, as you may know. So there's definitely, it's multidisciplinary, but it starts with STEM. The schools are building AusOcean equipment. So instead of outsourcing manufacturing to China, we're outsourcing it to, Seton High.
Now you're talking. Now I'm on the edge of my seat. Any other questions, please? Hand up there, at the back. Thank you.
Awesome. It's great to hear about the work that you're doing. On a bit more of a micro view, what does your governance look like in your charity specifically?
Yeah, well, we are a public company limited by guarantee. We're listed on the ACNC. We have a board of directors who keep me honest. We basically actually just approved today our 2020 financial statements. So we do everything that's required of us to be listed on ACNC and hopefully a bit more. We're still very, very small. We're still putting in, I will be the first to admit, we're still putting in place certain procedures. My board grilled me today saying, where's our risk register?
Hey, I have to ask a question. What's your diversity and inclusion policy?
Is that for me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Well, that would be one of the policies we have to articulate. And I'm a huge proponent of diversity and inclusion. And when I was at Google, I spearheaded Google's diversity and inclusion initiative, actually. We're still small. We have a lot to do, but we're quick learners.
Okay, we've got time for another question. Is Lawrence allowed to ask one? Isn't this your show, Lawrence?
I think I'm allowed.
Oh, okay.
Well, only
The
if you grant me permission.
prerogative from Lawrence. Go for it.
Thank you. I'm curious, can you share with us, you were head engineer at one of the biggest tech companies in the world. What lessons did you learn from working in that role at Google that you've brought to your organization? What learnings have you taken and applied in the work that you do?
Thank God you weren't at Facebook.
Yeah. So yeah, Google, not Facebook, but we'll just be very clear. So too many lessons to summarize. I actually wrote a chapter of the Australian Entrepreneurship Guide, which is freely available. So you Google while you can, the Australian Entrepreneurship Guide. you'll basically see my philosophy. But it kind of comes down to get the culture right. You know, diversity and inclusion is super critical. You've got to have an environment of mutual respect where everyone feels like they can come to the table and be heard and be a part of the organization's success. So I learned a lot about that. I also learned about taking or placing big bets. Google kind of uses this term moonshot a lot. And the original moonshot was putting people on the moon, but moonshot today means doing something really big, bold, and audacious. Not 10% better, but 10x better. So I'm a big believer in moonshots. We've got a big moonshot. We want to build this low-cost global network of sea service platforms, essentially democratizing access to ocean data. We will know so much more about our oceans. We'll be much, much better positioned to be good custodians of the oceans.
Fantastic answer. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you very much. I'm here all night.
Back to Izzy for our next presenter.
Hang on, wait.
Thank you, Julie.
And thank you, Alan Noble, for that inspiring speech. We've been lucky enough to actually visit one of the ocean rigs out from Glenelg, and it's a beautiful place to work and it's a beautiful place to be saving. So congratulations. Next up, we have Mr. Tim Jarvis AM. Tim Jarvis is an environmental scientist, author, adventurer, public speaker with master's degrees in environmental science and environmental law. He is committed to finding pragmatic solutions to major environmental issues related to climate change and biodiversity loss. He uses his public speaking engagements, films and books about his expeditions and work to progress thinking in these areas. Tim founded the Forktree project in 2000, working to rewild a degraded former pastoral property in the Fleurieu to help combat the twin threats of climate change and biodiversity loss. He holds the record for the fastest unsupported journey to the South Pole and was voted both the Australian Adventurer of the Year in 2013 and the Conservationist of the Year in 2016, the only person ever to receive both awards. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Tim Jarvis AM.
I think I wrote that. Apologies. Thank you, Izzy. Thank you, 10x10, for the opportunity to be here today to present to you. And if I can just say so before I start, I think all the charities here tonight are really worthy of your support, just to put that out there. I'm a recent import to South Australia. I've only been here 24 years, so you've got to forgive me for that. I came here originally to run two projects, one for the Murray-Darling Basin Commission, the other one for the Department of Agriculture and Fisheries. And the remit was easy, green Australian agriculture. So over I came, I ran the projects, and the strength of the projects was the fact that it involved farmers volunteering the use of their farms to trial new ways of doing things better, less herbicide, less pesticide, less water, re-establishing native vegetation on those properties. And it was incredible to see just how inspiring that was, how the lights came on, even amongst people who were really skeptical of that to start off with, really skeptical perhaps even about climate change, to see them turn from being skeptics to really coming on board and getting involved. It was really a very emotional journey, in fact. I think it's fair to say that the role from our point of view was to give those farmers recognition for doing the right thing. And the hope was that they could use that recognition via a certification scheme we had to get a few dollars extra paid for their products in the marketplace to offset the process of becoming greener. I think it's fair to say that 24 years ago when that project was on, we were a little bit ahead of the curve with that, and no one was prepared to pay. But what I would say is the thing that's really stuck with me since that project was the inspiration of seeing stuff done for real on farms for others to see, case study examples, exemplars of what is possible, and that's really remained with me. Fast forward 24 years, and of course the kind of threats that are on the horizon then, biodiversity loss and climate change, are now existential threats. Have no doubt about that in your minds. We are living in a world, we are living in an Australia, where Australia is the most climate exposed developed country in the world. The rates of biodiversity loss in this country, and you may as well substitute in the words species extinction are the highest in the world, ahead of Congo and Indonesia and Brazil and some fairly low achievers. That's nothing to be proud about. The good news is we can make a difference. Leading carbon and biodiversity university, ETH in Zurich, said in a landmark report they did a couple of years ago, we have 58 million hectares of land, spare land, in their words, available in Australia that we could put trees on to counter those threats. And when I say trees, I mean native vegetation. If you include retiring some of the agricultural land that we don't need, we can even double that figure to make a real step change. And that's where the Forktree project comes in. The Forktree project, as was said before, is about greening a 53-hectare former pastoral property on the Fleurieu Peninsula. Great, I hear you say. It's great to do. It is actually needed in the Fleurieu because the Fleurieu has actually lost 90% of its native habitat. But let's face it, 53 hectares is not going to make a whole lot of difference. The key thing with Forktree is remembering back to those lessons we learned 24 years ago about the importance of showing what is possible for others to see, so that tens of thousands of small landowners can emulate, maybe not all of what we're doing, but some of what we're doing, any of what we're doing, to make a big difference. And guess what? 75% of agricultural industries in Australia are small. What are we doing specifically at Forktree? We've got 4 goals. We're greening the footprint of Forktree. When we bought the property, it had 80 trees. It will have 20,000 by the time we've finished, and will be a really valuable store of flora and fauna in a place which is really very degraded. We are building a native seed nursery. We go out into the back blocks and gather seed from remnant species that still exist in small pockets and grow large numbers of them in the nursery. When we finish greening the Forktree footprint, we give them to the next person and spread the love. We are trialling new ways of working out carbon stored in the trees and in the soil on our land using remote sensing. Gone are the days of the costly taking soil cores and expensive audits that are out of the reach of the vast majority of small landowners, which is why they are not actively participating in being the solution to the problem. That must change. And we're opening a sustainability centre on the property. We already have schools lined up who want to come through to receive Australian curriculum ready content around the sustainability piece, SACE in this state. We are offering modules, potentially looking at Duke of Edinburgh based learning. We even want to have a TAFE program looking at some of the things we're doing on the property that can convert into TAFE qualifications. What have we done so far? This is a bit breathless, for which I apologise. What have we done so far? We have fenced the whole property with feral-proof fencing. We put in 800,000 litres of rainwater storage. We have planted 6,450 trees. We are growing currently another 5,000 in that seed nursery. That can grow to 50,000 with your help. We are building a sustainability centre for those schools to come through, and we're on our way to that, but still need your assistance. What do we need? We've done all this, I think it's fair to say, on the sniff of an oily rag. No one gets paid to do these things, and I think that is actually a very important component of what we are doing, certainly at this stage. We need 3 things. We need your help to spread the word about what we're doing, because the more we can spread the word, the more children we can get through, the more landowners we can get through, the more people from the corporate sector we can get through to see what we are doing on Forktree, to be inspired to do more, maybe on the land if they're a landowner, but if they're a corporate person, going back to their world and making the equivalent change in their world. It doesn't need to be planting trees. It can be something that relates closely to it that they're able to do in their world. We need volunteers. Yes, there's weeding. Take a look at my hands, you'll realise they're pretty blistered, pulling out olives, pulling out thistles, planting trees, fixing fences, digging holes. If there was an Olympic record for matic digging holes, I'd probably have it. So we of course need that help, but we also need help with things like marketing. We need help with putting together business plans. We need sponsorship proposals. We too are only 2 years into this exciting journey, but we need as much assistance as we can possibly get. Graphic design assistance. We need help with things like understanding how we can remotely access our data on our property to move water around more efficiently via an app, dare I say it, rather than me having to drive down and move water around to water saplings to keep them alive. We need all of that help we can possibly get. The big ask for us is, of course, we need money. We need money, and that money would go towards the Sustainability Centre. As I say, we already have schools backed up who want to come through. Is that the final thing? Thank you. And with your money and your help, we can make that a reality, as we can our seed nursery, which desperately needs additional funding. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Tim, thank you for that presentation. I guess what captured my attention was the impact of tree planting on farm productivity. You've got reduced pastures, say, reduced cropping land. How do you strike that balance?
Taking a leaf out of one of the expeditions I did a few years ago, retracing the journey of somebody called Ernest Shackleton, he had a team of people who were from very disparate backgrounds. He understood to get a group of people pulling in the same direction to achieve a singular outcome required selling the message differently to different people to get them to pull as one. And that's arguably a definition of what leadership really is. And when I speak to pastoralists, by the way, we're surrounded on two sides by sheep, two sides by dairy. You don't go in wearing a green hat saying, please save the planet for my children. You go in there talking to them about the benefits of putting in windbreaks and native vegetation for their property. Do you know that if you put those trees in a place like the Fleury where the wind blows across it very, very strongly, you get a wind shadow 10 to 15 times the distance of the height of your trees. And if you're a farmer who's watering grass and paying for the privilege to do that, that's going to save you a lot of money in terms of watering your grass to get the productivity you want from your pastures. So you've got to start thinking about how you sell the benefits of the trees that for me are all about saving the environment, but for them, the initial touch point might be about how it can improve their productivity.
Let's unpack that a little more. I think at one point you've claimed that you're representative of majority rural properties, yet Forktree is a not-for-profit. How would a for-profit farm introduce your program, given your volunteer support and the like, and still maintain profitability?
I think the easy answer to that is that we all need to do more. It's not, we are in a position, a unique position perhaps, where we have purchased a property and we have chosen to go the whole hog and rewild the whole place. I'm not suggesting everybody does that. Very evidently, if all farmers rewilded all land, we wouldn't be eating at the next interval. But what I am saying, and what science is telling us, is that we must retire between 15 and 20% of farmland in order to have enough space for the biodiversity we share this planet on to survive. So an individual farmer may put one paddock under tree cover, for example. What we're doing at Forktree, by looking at using remote sensing for working out better ways of working out how much carbon is stored in trees, is making the cost, the audit costs, which currently are prohibitive for small farmers, more accessible to them so that they can actually get income from planting those trees. Currently, it costs you $40,000 to do audits for an income stream you don't see for 3 or 4 years that may be twice that amount. It's just not worth it for farmers. Remote sensing cuts the cost down by about 90%, suddenly makes it viable for farmers to do the calculations using that, and it opens up an incredible income stream. We would receive perhaps $200,000 in carbon credits from just our small property if that were the case. So not everybody has to green the whole property. There's a sliding scale, but I think we all need to be doing more.
Let's talk about the role that fire plays in the Australian environment, and have you factored that into your program, and if so, explain.
Yes, I mean, look, at the moment, what we're doing is we're kind of gaming the system somewhat. So what happens in the Australian environment is that it is a very fire-dependent environment. The first species in are acacias, and they're the first colonizers, and they tend to be followed by gums. What we've done, because we obviously have an array of 6,450 little saplings growing in their tubes, is we don't run a fire through to try and get the acacia seeds to come through. What we do is we soak those acacia seeds in what they call smoke water, which is water infused with smoke, as the name suggests, which carries the chemical signature of the fact that smoke is in there. And you soak your acacia seeds in that smoke water and they think, oh, a fire's been through, we better start growing. You grow them in the tubes and then you put them in the ground. So there are ways of getting around the need to actually use fire to get, say, for example, your acacias or early colonizers to actually work. In terms of longer term, there will be definitely the need for ongoing fire management. Mark Kilmartry, who's head of the Indigenous Lands Council here in South Australia, is on our advisory board, and we'll be looking to do that, but into the future. This is not a year 2, year 3 kind of operation, but something a little bit further down the line.
I have to ask you, do you believe that there should be more controlled fires to reduce tinder and avoid the catastrophic events that we've seen across Australia in our brutal summers?
Yes, I think so. But I think there's a big misconception around the role that trees play in causing fire. I've had some detractors say, why do you want to plant more trees? Look at the fire season we've had. Aren't you just causing, and 1 or 2 of the landowners nearby have said, if there are trees on your land, isn't that going to increase fire risk? Well, the answer is no. Trees are actually a very effective windbreak. It's the wind sweeping across the country that makes the fires move fast. They hold moisture in the system, and the soil is far more moist if there are trees, and those trees evapotranspirate moisture into the atmosphere, which keeps moisture in the local environment. So in fact, trees are, in actual fact, a very good way of controlling fire. Having said that, we should take a leaf out of the Aboriginal people's notebook. They have been running this land long before we were here and deserve to be respected and listened to, and they use fire as a management tool, and I think we should too.
You mentioned fencing the property to keep out introduced species and predators and the like. Is the cost of fencing built into the program? I mean, do farmers have to suddenly turn their mind to more fencing and cost?
It's counterintuitive. If you want to run a rewilding project, there's a certain amount of contriving things you have to do at the beginning. And one thing, sadly, is keeping out excess numbers of things like kangaroos, who are native to there. But if you want to have success with species, you have to do it. What we've done is we've tried to find a really cost-effective way of extending the height of fencing to 1.8 metres, which is what you need to keep the roos out if you can. You can basically use star droppers attached to the standard 4-foot-high fence very cost-effectively and string your additional fence line up above that. And it reduced the cost of fencing by probably 60%, something like that. We've already incurred the cost of all the fencing, and we've kept the roos out only for the phase of establishing the saplings, at which point they'll be obviously part of the local environment.
What about introduced species, feral animals? Do you support more feral animal control programs?
I think anyone who's serious about re-establishing native habitat really has to have that kind of viewpoint. Having said that, I haven't seen, we don't have any deer. I almost trod on the fox the other day. I don't know who was more concerned, me or it. It was in a hole and it emerged. I've seen only 2 or 3 rabbits, but worryingly, those 2 or 3 rabbits I've seen in the last couple of weeks, I hadn't seen any in the previous 20 months. So they're back. Evidently, we need to do something humanely about managing those numbers, or again, you can't start to redress the balance. And it is the kind of the quandary that the modern environmentalist, if you like, faces, where we have to make some tough management decisions if we want to try and reinstate the native vegetation.
Tim, I'm going to ask you the second of Thomas Sowell's questions, is decision-making framework. So the first is compared to what? The second question works out rather well for you. At what cost? So what is the cost per hectare of your project?
Well, we've spent $260,000 so far, and we've got 53 hectares. So that's working out about $5,000 a hectare. If, as I say, as is part of the plan for the project, by the way, I think that's cheap at the price. And still, there is no effective way of really measuring the value of nature in this world of ours. What I would say is that as society, we need to be more serious about the amount of money we put towards it. And if you just indulge me for a sec, we were at the climate change talks, funnily enough, in Lima years ago now, 2014.
Seems like yesterday.
It does seem like yesterday. And there was a big announcement made that $10 billion US had been put into what they call the Green Climate Fund for solving climate change, contributed to by all the world's governments. And there was this big media announcement, everyone was happy and clapping and that sort of stuff. And I thought, I'm the only person in the room who is suffering from the fact that this is a problem. The global economy is $120 trillion a year, and we have amassed $10 billion to try and solve climate change, and we're celebrating that. That is, FYI, 1/12,000 of the global economy. Personally, I don't think that's commensurate with the scale of the problem. So I think we need to take this issue seriously, invest the money that's required to do it. And I think the short answer, sorry, to your question is about $5,000 a hectare is what we've spent.
Thomas Sol's question, at what cost, doesn't only focus on financial. He means reputational, personal, broader than just at what cost. So it's a very good point. Over to the audience. Any questions of Tim? I'm sure there are. Up the back. Yes, your hand up. The man in the striped shirt.
Tim, congratulations on the work that you're doing. We've dedicated about 30 acres out of our 150 acres in Inman Valley to do very much what you're doing. My issue, my concern, I ride a bike up through the lofty ranges. We see a lot of trees being planted, a lot of native vegetation there, but nobody is policing the growth in olive trees and blackberries. And if we don't have the Department of Environment and governments doing something about this, all your hard work, frankly, is wasted. What is the government and what is the department doing about it?
Just point at David Spears first for that bit. Sorry, mate.
No comment. He said to speak to him afterwards. It's a very good point. You know, the sad thing is that, you know, you're at the property and to the untrained eye, anything that's green looks okay. When you have spent years, in our case, just 2 years, even though it's my background doing this kind of work, 2 years pulling out introduced species, your drive home, the initial satisfaction of all the good work you've done is rapidly replaced by a drive along roads that are lined with dog rows, olives, phalaris, which is the introduced pasture grass, and just about everything else in between, mustard seed. And, you know, it's tragic going into those southern suburbs as you start to approach the outer suburbs of Adelaide, and 90% of the trees there must be wild olives just growing, and people are bouncing around all happily thinking this is a kind of an inverted commas native environment. We have removed all the olives on our property and we'll be offering means by which we can try and extend help in that area. We're almost like a broker because I've found that a lot of volunteers have come to us wanting to help, and a lot of landowners have been interested in what we're doing. And, you know, if you can meet the desire of the landowner to have more work done on their property with the volunteers' desire to do more, we can sort of help with a labour force to actually start, you know, really trying to tackle that.
May I ask, what size volunteer labour force do you need, say, for a 53-hectare property?
Well, I mean, the short answer is, you know, how many do we actually get? We probably get about 5 people a week, I'd say, realistically. Talk is cheap. A lot of people say, well, be there tomorrow, and you turn up, crack the door.
How many could you manage?
They ain't there. We could manage, realistically, perhaps 20 people at a time. I think beyond that, it starts to bottleneck because we are a young charity. But we are about to recruit a volunteer manager, and she'll do a pretty good job of finding out what it is that people want to do, finding out where their skills are, what their aptitude is. And we're always trying to marry up what we need being done with what it is that they want to do. But we could probably take 20 people a week very comfortably just doing the routine stuff.
Is there a government scheme that currently, so we remember the work for the dole scheme that I think that was the Howard government. Is there a current scheme that would enable people who are unemployed or people who have to get New Start, JobKeeper, JobSeeker, I don't know, what's the name of the program, that would support you?
Not that I've been able to access so far, but I think it's a fantastic idea. And it gives people such a tremendous sense of satisfaction to give back. You'd be amazed. I mean, we're strange creatures. You know, we drive our V8 four-wheel drive. We have all the lights on in the house. We fly up on our international trips and eat all the meat. And you plant one tree, and as far as you're concerned, the ledger is balanced. You know, you get such satisfaction doing one thing. There's a disproportionate amount of positivity it gives you for doing that one thing. But we really need to try and capture that.
Good on you, Tim Jarvis. Thank you for your presentation and answers to our questions. Back to Izzy.
Thank you so much, Tim. Next up, we have Dr. David Payton, AM. Dr. Payton has contributed to the scientific understanding and management of Australia's natural environment for 5 decades and is highly regarded for his research activities across the Mount Lofty and Kangaroo Island region and the Coorong. His research expertise includes the ecology and behaviour of birds, conservation, revegetation programs and habitat restoration, bird-plant interactions, and responses of flora and fauna to fire and drought. David founded BioR in 2007, recognising the need for a non-profit that could drive the restorations of woodlands in the heavily cleared landscapes of Southern Australia by securing long-term funding, promoting research science, and reconnecting the community to the environment. Please help me welcome Dr. David Payton.
Thanks, Eddie. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, Adelaide's backyard, your backyard, the Mount Lofty region, is a biodiversity hotspot, one of just 15 in this country. But the species, many of the species of plants and animals in that region are heading to extinction. Charismatic species like scarlet robins, or diamond firetails, among the list of species that will go probably in some of our lifetimes. This is happening on our backyard, your backyard, the hills, the Adelaide Hills. And it's happening in a place that is a biodiversity hotspot. Why is this happening? It's because we cleared too much of the native vegetation. If we have just 10% of the native vegetation left, as we have, places like the Mount Lofty region, which used to support 110 woodland bird species, can only support, with 10% of the habitat left, only support half of the bird species. They are heading to extinction. But it doesn't need to happen, because we can do something. There is hope. And the hope comes from this simple reason. In the 1980s, this state introduced native legislation to stop native vegetation clearance. That's in the 1980s. We stopped clearing the vegetation. And then for the next 40 years, people like me have spent my lifetime depressingly watching species disappear. This period when species disappear is known as paying the extinction debt. It's what my generation has passed on to your generations. It is also that window of opportunity. We could turn it around. That window of opportunity, we could put back the habitat before they've all disappeared and keep the species we have left. Now, if we wanted to keep the species we had left, we have to take the amount of vegetation we currently have, this cover of native vegetation, just 10%. We have to lift that to 30%. And we've probably got barely 100 years to do it. Now, put that in perspective for the Mount Lofty region, that is a staggering 150,000 hectares of new habitat that needs to go back if we want to keep the species we have today. And it's feasible to do. Let me try and illustrate. BioR builds habitats for wildlife. It's designed to meet their needs. Now, if we can do this and we can broaden that, and we don't do what many people do, is just plant trees and sit and hope that the birds will come. No, we actually design those habitats to meet the requirements of the animals such that there is a high chance of outcome. We monitor, we use ecological research to not just secure that, but to secure habitats that are self-sustaining and resilient. Our BioR's current capacity is that we can put back about 10 hectares of new habitat per year planted out. That's never going to cut the mustard. What we want to do is in 10 years' time, to be putting back 100 hectares of new habitat across this region. And in 25 years, 1,000 hectares. And to do that, we need you to help. And if we do that, in 100 years' time, we'll have put back 150,000 hectares of habitat. We will have made something you'll see from outer space. But most importantly, we'll have secured our biodiversity for future generations. Now that might seem simple, but the question then is how you might do that. So BioR is entirely made up of volunteers. We have 15 core players who do this and a whole lot of really fantastic volunteers. Those volunteers, 300 of them, they come out and plant the plants for us. Last year, 20,000+ plants were put in the ground. They come out with their families, they get their hands dirty, they connect to nature. And the amazing thing is they have a great time making and delivering environmental outcomes. We want you to come on that journey with us. But one of the big issues here is to fund this. And one of the ways in which we might be able to fund this is to think differently. Not go and seek funds from philanthropic groups and generous donors, but to start getting people to think about offsetting their ecological footprint. Now, that just simply means that we have to give back something to nature to get these outcomes. We need to take some of that land away from agriculture that's been cleared and some of it's not being used for agriculture and give some of that back to nature with habitats on it. And you might ask, well, how much would that cost me as an individual? About $1 a day. And what's the tangible asset you'll get if you invest in offsetting your ecological footprint? If you did that for your lifetime at $1 a day, then you would have a habitat, a hectare of this new habitat. And if lots of us did that, we'd piss in this 150,000 hectares. We would have brought a society together that is really what BioR would like to see, is people connected to nature. And future generations can enjoy our wildlife. So my BioR ask of you is very simple. I want each and every one of you to ask yourself this question. Do I want to live in a region that is a biodiversity hotspot, where we just stand by and let our species disappear? Or do you want to be one of the solutions? If you want to be in the solution where this is not the case, where you're not left to seeing species in a box, then sign up to BioR's social pages. Enlist as a volunteer. Come and be part of the solution. And together, we can secure this region's biodiversity. Thank you.
Now, David, this may seem self-evident to you, but just explain for us why it is important for us to have 110 species of woodland birds rather than the 55 we have. Now, we've all grown up with evolutionary theory and natural selection and survival of the fittest and Darwinian concepts. Why is it important to rebuild the diversity?
Well, actually, you won't get 110 species. You'll get at best 100. 10 have already disappeared. We already have good evidence that another 40 are disappearing. So let's say we're going to try to get for 100. To me, this is a question about thinking about true sustainability. Whatever we do in life, we're only sustainable if the biodiversity of the region in which we live is also being sustained. I'll tell you, ladies and gentlemen, we live in a place where the biodiversity is actually disappearing before our eyes. We're standing by.
David, obviously for your project to be successful, to have the outcome you want, it's got to be adopted by landowners. Are there financial benefits that can be identified for private landowners who embrace your program?
Well, I only need some of them to do that. So we're talking of lifting it from 10% to 30%. And if you looked at the Mount Lofty region, if ever there was a place where you could bring something like this together, every landowner actually is growing productive resources for the humans who are having an income coming off the farm.
Right. Yes, yes. That's very good.
And my feeling is that many of these properties are potentially available. But there's some hidden catches here, which is the science which comes into it.
Yeah.
If you look at that, it's heavily disproportionately clear. The best quality agricultural land.
Right. It wasn't anybody Russian, was it?
Steep slopes, the gullies, the poor quality things, you might have 15 to 20. Collectively, 10%. If you really want to put back the system for the biodiversity, you've got to have a bit of order.
So, what did he tell him to do?
People on good quality.
For example,
one of the issues I have is that so many people no longer able to maintain their farms. Their relations doesn't want to be there.
Hands up, anyone who likes ice cream.
There'll be properties available.
So everyone put that.
We would buy those the actual natural state. And for me, that's the solution to that problem.
Now, of course, I'll declare an interest. I grew up in the Adelaide Hills at Basket Range, and the Mount Lofty region is very dear to my heart. So I'm very interested in this and the other two projects as well, of course. But just tell me whether this can be scaled up and at what cost. How does one scale up your idea and big?
Okay, so the way in which this will scale up is not me leading it. The only way this will be delivered is to have a program of works which is owned by the generations. It is intergenerational, and I'm sure it's the same with both the other programs as well. So for me, one of the great things I like about BioR is that there's lots of young people there. But I only need 150,000 people to come to the party.
Over what period?
Over 100 years. To put the habitats back, preferably a little bit early, because the longer you delay, the harder it is.
Well, you won't be there to employ them.
I won't be there to employ them. I won't be there to inspire them. I depend very much on the younger generation to do that. And one of the key things, one of the things I love about BioR is that it's got an enormous, I don't know why, because I'm not attractive
I don't know, your mother must love you.
She probably did, as all mothers do. But the great thing for me is that there are many, many young people in the ages of 20s and 30s, young professional students who are engaged. And it's one of those things where, you know, people say go away and there's still this work to be done. That's a challenge, that's great. But the thing which I love about BioR and what it's doing is that there's always young people wanting to find a place where they don't feel helpless about the biodiversity. They don't think it's hopeless. They're not overwhelmed by the task, but they are a small part of a much bigger program that can deliver the outcomes that this state deserves.
David, one of the most compelling images of Australia that has ever graced the world stage were the koalas and the kangaroos being burned in the bushfires with their little paws, and it didn't matter where one was in the world, and this was at the beginning of COVID. I'm sure you were all contacted by people saying, oh my God, you're burning the koalas alive. Tell me about fire in this environment. How do you factor this into your program?
So let me just put this in perspective. Not one of those species like koalas and kangaroos, in terms of their existence, were threatened by those fires. There are, in fact, a heap of other species that are seriously threatened by those fires. And no one hears about them because we're preoccupied with what we might connect to. Why do you connect to koalas, you might ask? Well, I know.
Because they're gorgeous.
No, they've got ears like ours, and they've got two forward-pointing eyes, and we can identify with them. So we do. Humans connect to humans. And so that's part of the reason for that. Fire. So how do we manage fire? because we do large-scale restoration programs, we're working out on a place called Fran's Farm, 500 odd hectares. We can actually design in the replanting programs where you'll have fuel-reduced habitats, where there isn't much fuel, and other places where there will be fuel. We also know that you've got to have fire in these systems in the long term. When I talked about a resilient habitat, I want to produce a habitat where in the years of it sitting there before a fire comes, it's produced the seed, and so when the fire comes, it can go through a succession process and bounce back without us having to invest dollars back into that to build another habitat. So for me, fire is both a challenge to control, but it's also a part of the biodiversity for going forward.
I want to ask you about the topic I also raised with Tim, and that's about introduced predators and feral animals and things. How do you factor that into your program, and what should governments do to ensure that its policies in these areas of feral animal control, how does that support what you wanted to do?
So let me try and put that in a more scientific way of thinking. We currently have 10% of the native vegetation left. We could invest all of our resources in controlling the feral pests, the feral weeds, and what we've got left. And to do that, we'd be doing really well. But at the end of it, in 100 years' time, you still will have lost half of your biodiversity in the region because there is not enough habitat. So first and foremost is, if you want to make a difference in this region, we've got to be taking and putting back more habitat. And then we can manage those other species. Now, I'm a realist. There are some things which you might argue are weeds which you might spend a vast amount of money for and never get rid of. Some of those weeds might actually be important covers. So, for example, in the Mount Lofty Ranges, blackberries and southern brown bandicoots go hand in hand because this provides the cover. So if you're going to replace something which is doing service and introduce it to non-introduced, you need to then think about putting it in gradually. And I think, and our plantings are actually about being able to cope with the changes going forward. We think outside the square. We don't just put back what was once there. We think, well, climate change. We're going to be threatened by climate change. What are you going to put in there to say that at least if climate change comes and knocks out some of the plants, you've still got something there which is going to be the fabric habitat you want? That's the type of thinking we need to be doing. And I actually sit there and say, yep, we can manage those things. We actually fence off large areas of the areas we revegetate to keep kangaroos out because they're a problem. Sure, they're part of the system, but I can assure you, just doing that suddenly changes the cost of putting plants in. You don't only have to guard them. You can actually put in large numbers for the same cost as you would if you're putting it across a paddock which had scattered shrubs in it. And the bottom line is, as soon as it gets above the guard, the kangaroos crop them off. So managing those is actually an ongoing adaptive approach rather than being with just investing one or the other.
David, in one sentence, what is the specific environmental challenge that your program addresses?
We're aiming to stop biodiversity loss within a region that is listed federally as a biodiversity hotspot. If we don't do it there, we're not going to do it anyway.
And biodiversity means?
Biodiversity means all sorts of things for lots of people, but it means
the outcome and animals. You achieve that, and the outcome is?
The outcome is in a healthy environment for all. Everybody has that ability to interact and enjoy and appreciate what the real difference of this country is to every other one. And that is our biodiversity.
The third question in the Thomas Sowell framework is, what is the hard evidence available that assures you'll achieve the outcome you desire from your program?
Okay, so we've been around for about 10 years. We've probably put in and started to address about 250 hectares of habitat, putting back this habitat. One of those properties is on Kangaroo Island. We started working on that about 10 years ago. It's now got about 200 hectares of re-established habitat. It is, to my knowledge, the first piece of privately owned land which has gone in front of the minister to be listed off as a heritage agreement. It's not native, it's re-established. In the 10 years it's been there, there's been a massive increase in birds. When we started, the paddock supported 0.2 of a bird per hectare. It's now around 8 or 9. If you took just one endangered species glossy black cockatoos. Even though they were starting to use the property fairly early on, it was 2 to 4 back in the 2007s to 10s. It was something that was in the vicinity of 10 to 20 about 2017, 18, 19. After the fire, this piece of revegetation on its own is supporting 30 to 40 glossy black cockatoos, close to 10% of the global population of that species. And that's on one farm.
Okay, thank you, David. I now turn over to the audience. Yes, we have a question, please, at the poll.
David, I've got a question for you from Daria, who joins us via the live stream. What are BioR's top 2 internal capabilities that will support its success?
Internal capabilities. I think the one thing we have at the present is we've got a nucleus of staff, committed, and a massive volunteer base, almost welded on, that want to do this. And to me, that's the piece of the most important part there. The other component which I think will help us deliver is that we underpin what we do with science. And therefore, we are going to be learning and adapting what we do. We're not going to take risks with this. We are going to take risks, but they're going to be calculated and measured, and we're going to measure them and we'll report them. And they're the 2 components that probably give BioR a capacity to deliver this. But we also would like, and we need, the funding to better broaden and expand what we do.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, in the lovely Hawaiian shirt, or is it a beach shirt?
Well, whatever you want it to be.
It's just very attractive, that's all.
Oh, thank you. Obviously, choosing between the effectiveness of 3 charities, we're very focused on scale, which is something that's been mentioned tonight. With the marine organisation, there's a real focus on the scale of technology that can be rolled out over a large area. With the last 2 programs, there's a common ground on reforestation, and we heard some of the tools such as seedling bank and education that can be passed on to other people to help them do more of that. What specifically does your organisation do that can be passed on to other people to help scale this effort?
It's really interesting. I've given a lot of thought to how you scale up what we do. I mean, we have programs in schools and school groups. We run History Science Week. We also have some money from Science and Innovation in South Australia to run exercises on Kangaroo Island and also on the mainland. But it's primarily around getting them connected to nature, getting youngsters connected to nature from the schools, because that's the key thing we need here. The one thing we miss out in this society is we live in cities. Most of us have lost that raw, pure connection to nature. We need to regain that. In terms of scaling this up, there are things which are really interesting, and you might just bear with me here, is that if you talk about social networks, and we've just had some of your social networks have been trashed. But for most of us, we have an inner network of 20 to 30 people, and it might go out to about 150, and that's your network. And that's your network of close people. In the old days, that was what set the Roman armies set around that number. Things like that. That's actually the group of people you have an influence, the people who might come and help you. For us, the models that we have will be basically to try and replicate this sort of system in other areas where you build. Some of our younger people who are doing that are actually running their own programs and dealing with that way. So that's the sort of way in which we would build it at the moment.
Well, talking of social networks, I've been multitasking. So while you've been asking questions, I've been adding to my Instagram story what David Spears has been putting on his Instagram. So even though we've got a live feed, it's all happening on Instagram tonight.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, last question for David. Over here, thank you. Our microphone's on its way.
David, you said that your goal of 150,000 hectares of new habitat, what impact would that have in terms of increasing rainfall, reducing temperature, and what impact does that have on biodiversity, especially when biodiversity includes us?
Good question. I would argue in the right place, made of the right stuff, this will be a great advantage to biodiversity. Rainfall is fickle, particularly in this country. It probably depends when climate change comes. If you talked about, will the plantings we do still capture carbon? Absolutely, they'll still capture carbon. and so you'll be reducing it there. But in terms of the potential to have increased rainfall as a consequence of trees evapotransport, fine, it's possible. In terms of actually reducing temperatures, it'll have a marked effect. I mean, they've done research even by just watering lawns around cities to show that even a few trees planted in neighbourhoods will dampen temperatures substantially. And that could well be a great advantage for species if we truly can't turn the climate change juggernaut around in time to prevent not just the 2 to 3, but the 4 to 5 degrees Celsius. So they all meet that. But to get quantitative data for that, I couldn't tell you, but it's something we could certainly measure.
David, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, you have heard 3 outstanding presentations, and I want you to join with me in thanking our 3 presenters at this stage of proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. I want to get Tim, David and Alan all up here just for a few minutes to follow on from the amazing words that Julie said, and you can just stand up. I just want to say that I think this movement's about supporting grassroots heroes that work in local communities around Australia. And I think the work that each of you are doing is so incredible. And I think you should take energy from this room that all the people that have come here tonight are here to support you and the amazing work that you do. And so you are the local heroes that work in our community, and doing that work is so tiresome, thankless and hard. And so nights like tonight should give you the energy to go out into the community and continue that work. And know, David, that there is a whole generation of young people that is going to carry on your legacy and keep doing that work in community. So can everyone please give these guys a massive round of applause? The next thing I want to say is, as I said at the start, our whole model is also about matching skills in this room with the need that these organisations have. And on our website, there is a number of volunteer opportunities that you will see to volunteer your time to help these organisations. Julie got out of a couple of these guys some of those opportunities are. But guys, in 1 minute, we don't have any more time. Quick. Tell us how people in this room or their networks, their friends, can give their time to help you in your work.
Come and see us over there.
Come and see over there.
Volunteers with technical skills.
Use those technical skills, sign up to BioR's social pages, website, etc. All the opportunities are there.
Great. The last thing we're going to do, and I'm not going to do it now, but remember, 10 by 10 only exists when we get 10 new volunteers from this room to put their hands up to be part of the organising committee for the next event. So we only exist if we can continue doing that and continue legacy. Actually, I'm going to do it now. I'm going to get in trouble with Kat. But hey, guys, do we want this movement to continue in Adelaide? If we do, can we please see right now 10 hands go up in the room? There's one to be on the committee for the next event. Actually, Kat, can you just tell people what's involved? Because they might think that this is like some huge obligation, but we know it's not. Go and tell them what's involved.
I think it's about a 3-month commitment, probably. 10 friends working together. So 10 of us all work full time, and we still manage to put this event on. You don't need to have any special skills. Part of the fun of being on the 10 by 10 committee is doing things that you never normally do in your working life, such as filmmaking. So I'd encourage any person who's interested in forming a committee. All it takes is, passion and interest in a cause that you care about, and then just working to support that cause. I think that's the core need to be in a 10 by 10 committee.
Awesome. And you're supported by our office, which helps you execute the event. So guys, 10 people, hands up now. When I first did this, everyone said it wasn't going to work. You're dreaming, this isn't going to work, you're going to fall into. So three. The former foreign minister needs to go home and spend time with her family. We are taking time away from her. Can we please have...
I don't want to tell Western Australians that we win at everything.
Yeah, that's right.
Come on.
10.
Come on, 10.
It's on live stream as well. We'll take volunteers from the live stream. We've got 3 volunteers. 4. 5 to go. 6. Thank you so much. 4 more. Come on, Adelaide. 4 more. We got 1. 7. Do we have anyone on the live stream? 7. 3 more. Come on, guys. Not a massive commitment. 8. 2 more. Come on. 9 and 10, thank you very much. Big round of applause. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much. Kat's going to hand over and tell you how the rest of the night's going to run, but there are two really important people I want to thank. First of all, I would like to thank Kat for her incredible commitment to this committee, for pulling it together. I know you've done so much work for Kat. Thank you for your dedication to 10 by 10. And also our head of city, Nicole Andrews, who's been such a loyal ambassador for our movement. She's carried the candle here for 3 years, has been an incredible source of leadership and inspiration. You guys should be so proud that you've got such capable, amazing people giving back to your community. So Nicole, thank you for all the amazing work that you've done for us, and we wouldn't have been able to exist here without you, so thank you. Over to you, Kat.
All right, so now we're going into our voting section. It's going to take exactly 15 minutes. You're going to hear a bell 5 minutes before voting is due to finish, and it's going to sound like that. So please cast your vote as soon as we break, and then you can go on to speak with the charities, find out more about them. You can take a bit of time to speak to them if you need something clarified that might assist in your decision and which charity to vote for. There'll be 10 by 10 committee members stationed over that way with ballot boxes, red for BioR, green for Forktree, and blue for AusOcean. So using your charity dollars, just drop them in the ballot box of your choice. Just a reminder that every dollar that you donate tonight is going to go directly to the charity. So if you have been particularly inspired, there is also an opportunity to give them more. You can donate directly via the Possible website, which is the ticketing website through ticketing link through our website. We also have QR code stations at the charity stations that will take you directly to that link. After you cast your vote, you can help yourself to some refreshments, and then we'll have an auction of business persons. Again, the proceeds of that auction going to part of the tally that's going to the charities. So we'll break now for the next half hour, 15 minutes for voting, and then 15 minutes for the auction, and then we'll close the evening. Thank you.
On the agenda, ladies and gentlemen, is this fantastic work of art here by South Australian artist Sering Hannaford. I've got a vested interest in the outcome of this auction. I think it's very important that I declare my vested interest that this wonderful print is by Sering Hannaford. Sering Hannaford is a 6-time Archibald finalist. This year was highly commended in the Archibald. Daughter of Robert Hannaford, regarded as one of South Australia's leading artists, and is undoubtedly unquestionable that Sering will at some point in time take out the prize itself. I have complete confidence that you will be acquiring an artwork that is of an Archibald, not just finalist, but winner at some point in time. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to open the bidding for this beautiful work. It's a lovely still life painting. It's the first edition of this run of 25. It's a beautiful print. It can hang in a wonderful home in the wonderful suburbs of Adelaide. Do I have an opening bid of $300? $300 at the back. 300. Do I hear 350? 350. Sorry, I should also say that this print retails for $600. So anyone buying it for 350 is getting a great deal. It's at 350, and obviously all the funds that go from this print are going to go to support the 3 charities in equal measure that you hear from. We're at 350. Do I hear 400? $400. Do I hear 450? 450, ladies and gentlemen. 450. I've been informed online that we have a bid at 450. $450. Do I hear $500? $500. You're bidding against your husband. Is he cool with that? It's 600. Family feud, ladies and gentlemen, right here between your husband and wife bidding against each other. It's now at $600. $650. Are you related to the family as well, sir? Complete declaration. $650. We're at $650, ladies and gentlemen. Any bids online? $650. If we could get this print to at a higher number, I have had a discussion with the artist. She would be willing to give her time for a drawing lesson or a life drawing class with someone. She'd give an hour and a half of her time if this print could reach $1,000. So if we get to $1,000, she will give an hour and a half of her time. I've been to a life drawing class with her. It's a bit like showing up to soccer practice with Ronaldo. It's quite daunting, but it's something that you would get a lot of value out of. She's willing to give an hour and a half of her time. If we get this print from 650 to 1,000. So we have, so where are we at? We're at 650. $1,000. $1,000 for the lady in front. We're at $1,000. A print with a live drawing or a drawing class with Searing Hannafin, ladies and gentlemen, we've got $1,000. Do we hear a raise on 1,000? Going once to a former ambassador of 10 by 10. It would be great pleasure to give this to her. But I will just take more because we're trying to get more for the charities. Going twice, $1,000. Do we hear any more? Sold to Kate Stock for $1,000. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laurie. We've auctioned off the beautiful art print by Searing Hannafin. But now we have the Business Mentors auction. Before I do that, I just want to remind you that we still have the closing address by Julie Bishop later in the evening, so please stay around for that. It's pretty special to have Julie in the state. We have been severely lacking in Julie Bishop for the past year, so we're really thrilled to have her here, so please stay around for that. Second, if you see a spare seat, please take a seat in it. You can rest your weary legs and you can also fill up the front of our seating. No, I mean it, take a seat. Yeah, this is for the online people as well. Okay. So South Australia is home to the once mighty Murray Mouth, the biggest drain for our country's biggest river. Alas, we are also known as home to the country's biggest brain drain. But in 2021, it's not just property prices that are rising rapidly in South Australia. The tide has turned, and we are now on the cusp of a brain gain. The I Choose SA hashtag seems to be finally working. Alan Noble, Tim Jarvis, David Rorsheim, and Professor Caroline McMillan. Just look around this room and you will see dozens of amazing brains that have either returned home or chosen Adelaide as their new home. These brains and this energy gives us the potential to become a national and global leader in science, technology, innovation, and most importantly, the environment. Oh, my microphone is rising. It is an exciting time to be in South Australia. So tonight I'll be auctioning off 3 impressive brains. We have Mr. David Rorsheim over to my right, who's the Portfolio Manager of the South Australian Venture Capital Fund. We have Professor Caroline McMillan, AO, seated in front of me, who's the Chief Scientist for South Australia. What an amazing achievement. And not with us tonight, but hailing from Adelaide, currently based in Sydney, we have Ms. Elise Tran, co-founder and creative director of The Daily Edited. So you have the opportunity to bid on a... Thank you. Yes, very exciting. You have the opportunity to bid on a private mentoring session with these incredible professionals who have generously donated their time and knowledge. These are a 1-hour, one-on-one mentoring session, with timing to be scheduled between the mentor and bid winner. Please join me in further supporting our 3 environmental charities by bidding generously and ferociously on these 3 great SA brains. So first up, we have David Rorsheim. Would you like to come and stand as the brain that we are auctioning off first? Thanks, David. David Rorsheim is the Portfolio Manager in charge of the South Australian Venture Capital Fund. He previously founded Uber in Australia in 2012 and scaled the business over 6 years into a household name with millions of customers. He previously worked in California at a venture capital fund that backed legendary companies such as Skype, Hotmail, Tesla, and SpaceX. He holds an MBA from Stanford and Bachelor's of Engineering and Finance from Adelaide University, where he graduated with first-class honours. In his spare time, he seeks to automate everything in his house. And tonight, he is very excited to meet Alan Noble, which I think he has already done. Excellent. If you have a business idea you wish to develop and would like pitch and presentation coaching from SA's venture capital expert, or if you just want to have a chinwag with David,
My business accomplishments are vastly overstated, but I can confirm that I have a perfect 5.0 rating as an Uber driver. So if you want to use your 1 hour for a ride to the airport or to get you some McDonald's and bring it home, that's okay too.
Okay, so this mentoring session will happen in an Uber, we've established. So if that sounds like you, then get your wallet ready because David Rawshine's brain is the one you need to win tonight. So let's get this bidding party started. Can I have an opening offer from the floor? $300 from Laurie. It might be a Sydney appointment, but that's okay. 400 from the back. Thank you so much. 500 from the former Foreign Minister of Australia. That's exciting. Where will the Uber drive happen though? Okay, back in Adelaide. Fair enough. Your new home. You have to add on to that. You can't just come for free. Okay, we're up to, I thought she already paid 600. Oh, fine, sorry, my bad. 600 here. Are there any higher offers? 700 from the back. Thank you very much. There's some enthusiasm for this Uber ride. Any other bidders from the floor? Going once? I don't really understand the mathematics of adding a cup of tea, but 800 from Patricia in her floral dress up the front. 900 up the back. We've got a fierce competition happening. I think we can get it to 1,000. Is there a biscuit involved? Oh, that sounds nice. Okay, so we've got 900 and a bottle of red, 800 and a cup of tea. Oh! 1,000 here, 1 here. Done, we've sold it for 1,000. Thank you, David Rawshine. And I didn't realise that Ubers came with cups of tea and wine, but I learn something new every day. Okay, we're on to Professor Caroline McMillan AO next. Please come up to the stage. I love that we have moving music. Professor McMillan commenced in the role as Chief Scientist for South Australia in October 2018 after serving as Vice-Chancellor of the University of Newcastle from 2011. She is a Fellow of the Australian Academy of Health and Medical Sciences and a Bragg member of the Royal Institution Australia. She holds a Bachelor of Arts Honours and a Doctor of Philosophy from the University of Oxford and completed her medical training graduating from the University of Cambridge. Professor McMillan's research on how the environment in early development determines adult health has attracted national and international recognition. If you are passionate about building collaborations between research, government and industry to deliver economic, environmental and social impact, or indeed for anyone who is interested in or is involved in the STEM industries, then it is Professor Caroline McMillan's brain you must pick tonight. So where is my starting bid for this incredible brain?
I think that we need more female STEM role models, and you can't achieve that, so I'm starting at $500.
That's an excellent starting bid. Thank you, Julie. From the middle.
I will match the winning bid.
Put your money where your mouth is. When you support the environmental industries, we all grow. So that's just fantastic. Thank you, Caroline. Starting with a cup of tea. I think we can raise it from there. $500 and $750 from Patricia down the front. Are there any takers for higher than that? Chief scientist here, guys. This is incredible. I have noticed. Oh, okay. So you can donate, you can buy the time. No, I don't know what I've done. That's a great idea, Laurie. So you can buy the time of the chief scientist to donate to the charity so that they can have a special one-on-one time with the chief scientist. Very ingenious. I like it. So we've still got $7.50 up the front. Are there any more bids for tonight? And remember, it is going to be matched by Caroline, so that's an incredibly generous offer from the chief scientist. I will take bids after the close if you're feeling nervous, but for now, going once. David, thank you. What is your bid? 800. Thank you, David. Oh, mutual benefits, I think. Okay, I think David would probably better win it then. So we've got 800, maybe a cup of tea. I don't know what David's offerings are. Going once for 800. David has to bid 1,000. Gender equality, please. All right, thank you. Woo! So we've got 1,000 from David and 1,000 from Caroline. It actually does make a lot of sense. So going once for David, going twice. Sold to David Rorsheim, who has bought Caroline McMillan. I really love this mixing of brain power. It's fantastic. Congratulations, David, and thank you, Caroline. And finally, in her absence, but many of you may have read about her or seen her or met her before, with a first-class honours degree in law and commerce, Elise Tran started her career as a corporate lawyer at an international law firm, King and Wood Mallisons. Elise and her co-founder, Tanya Liu, launched the Daily Editor's accessories line in 2014 as a passion project on the side of being full-time lawyers. And the brand has become an international success with stores across Australia and the US. As co-founder and creative director of TDE, Elise is responsible for the strategic direction, growth plan, marketing online and offline, and visual aesthetic of TDE's brand and product. She has also run the everyday operations of TDE from day one. As a side hobby, Elise has also co-founded tabletop homewares brand In the Roundhouse that quickly gained traction and is currently stocked in David Jones. If you have a creative business mind and want to develop, launch, market and grow your brand or product, then bid on Elise Tran's powerhouse brain tonight. Can I please have an enthusiastic starting bid? Thank you. I'm not sure if that's enthusiastic, but I will take it. $100 from in the middle. Elise has entrepreneurial ideas coming out of her brain and she's fantastic at helping you brainstorm your ideas. Yes? Part of the brain game. Patricia has bid $1,000 to bring Elise home for 1 hour. I think we can work on that. So the condition is it must be in Adelaide. We can work on that. Are there any other takers from the floor? Okay, we've got a destination in Perth mentoring session. 1,100 from the front from the former Foreign Minister. Have we got any takers from up the back? I genuinely mean it when this brain is a powerhouse. She is going places. TDE is just the start. I think I'm going to have to come in between you guys soon. But sure, 1,200? Adelaide? We've got 1,200 for Elise trying to come to Adelaide for a 1 hour mentoring session. I'm trying to keep this professional. Any more takers? Is she going to Perth or is she going to Adelaide? No, I don't know if Ed can sponsor her. Going once for $1,200. Going twice for $1,200. Hilariously sold to Patricia for $1,200 in Adelaide. And we have one more thing. At the last minute, this could be a bargain for someone. At the last minute, Elise generously donated a $1,000 voucher for TDE products. In my mind, I'm really hoping this is going to go to a company who wishes to buy some corporate gifts for their clients or their connections. It's a really beautiful brand if you don't know it. Personalised leather goods. Julie's a big fan. So if you would like to bid on this $1,000 TD, oh, there's an example down the front. But they also have clipboards, compendiums, business card holders. Oh, thank you. There's my phone cover. A $1,000 voucher. You could get a really good bargain deal. Can I have an opening bid for the $1,000 TDE voucher, which you can spend at David Jones just across the road? Oh, 200 at the front. Fantastic. Any other bids, Marie? 300 at the back. 350 at the front. You could get a bargain still here, guys. Bid quick. 400 in the middle there. 450. 450 at the back with Marie, still holds it now. 500, I'm glad we're seeing some enthusiasm. Think of all of those compendiums you can buy. 550 from Beck. Oh, I knew you were keen on this one. 550 from Beck at the back. And remember, it's kind of like a double deal. You're donating to charity and you're getting heaps of beautiful products as well. So I think it's an absolute bargain. I think we can bid it much closer to $1,000. So we've got 550 at the back with Beck. Any other takers? Kat, Raf? Oh, I think Nicole got 600. 600 from Nicole. Raf? 650 from Raf. This is a very much an in-house competition going on here. We had the family feud before, now we've got the committee feud. 650 from Ralph. Beck, Marie, anyone else? Okay, it's an incredible prize. Going once for 650, going twice for 650. Any more bids from the floor? Whoa, Marie got that. 700 from Marie. Woohoo! Beck, are you going to follow up or Ruff? I love this fighting between friends, but in a good way. All for charity. Any more from you, Beck? You can split it. Oh, you're going to anyway. Okay, fine. Well, 750. Was it 700? Sorry, 700. Marie going once. Going twice. 700 sold to Marie, a beautiful TD voucher. Thank you for your enthusiastic and surprisingly ferocious bidding. I don't know. Housekeeping, but important. If you have volunteered or put up your hand to suggest that you might volunteer, can you please come see one of the committee members? Sorry, can you come see Ash to the end of the night so that she can get some contact details? It's not a concrete commitment, but it's maybe in wood. So please go put your name down with Ash so that you can get excited for the next committee. It is a really incredible experience. I have loved it and I've learned so much from the experience, and I have really enjoyed being able to create an evening like this and contribute and support these incredible charities tonight. Oh, thank you. We're just waiting on the results of voting, I believe. Katrina will be with us soon. Oh, sorry. Julie, I think we're ready for your speech now, if that's all right. We are still finalised. Oh, no, sorry, my bad. Katrina, go for it.
So I'm going to announce the results of our voting. It's my pleasure tonight to announce that we have raised a total of $39,579. Of that amount, AusOcean gets $12,995,000. BioR $13,385. And Forktree, $13,200. Congratulations to all of the charities, and thank you, all of you, for making this event possible. I will now welcome on stage the Honourable Julie Bishop, Chancellor of Australia National University and former Foreign Affairs Minister of Australia, to give us our closing address.
Last night, NASA's rover Perseverance made a successful landing on Mars to undertake the most complex mission yet. And no one was more excited than Abigail Allwood, the first Australian, indeed the first female, to be a principal investigator on a NASA Mars mission. Now, if anyone can find rocks on Mars that indicate life, it's Abby. Because during her PhD in Australia, she discovered stromatolites in the Pilbara that were over 3.5 billion years old. She is an extraordinary Australian. And tonight, we have heard, we've been privileged to hear from 3 more outstanding Australian scientists and researchers in David and Tim and Alan. And they are committed to ensuring that life on this planet is sustainable. You can't help but be inspired by a commitment to the goal of preserving our environment. Sure, there may be other planets in the galaxy that are potentially habitable, but we don't know of them. And we do know that Earth is currently the only planet that can sustain life. So this is a precious environment. And we have to look after it. As they say, there is no planet B. Now, if we are to have large impact, positive outcomes for preserving the environment, we need to enlist others to the common cause. When I was Foreign Minister for 5 years, I learned that there were 2 ways to advance Australia's national interest on the world stage and to amplify our influence. The first was to develop ourselves policies and ideas that were so attractive to other nations that they would adopt or adapt them themselves. Secondly, we sought to influence the decisions made by the much larger and more powerful nations, backed up by strong advocacy and strong and logical arguments supported by strong evidence. And I think that this is an approach that should apply for those who are seeking to advance the cause of preserving our environment against further degradation. It starts with leading by example. And so we have to ensure that our personal behaviours and priorities actually reflect the ideals
that we're promoting. You can't expect others to change if you don't. And allegations of hypocrisy can undermine the best of intentions. So if we can ensure that our personal choices are consistent with the positions that we're advocating, then we can focus our attention on developing proposals and projects and programs that provide a benefit to others. Because the positive impacts have to be tangible. There are so many vested interests that are threatened by a change, threatened by an alteration of the status quo. Sir David Attenborough has warned us time and time again, as have so many others, but let's start with Sir David, has warned us that humanity is on a dangerous path. It's threatening the very complex ecosystems that sustain life. Now, I was brought up on a cherry and apple orchard in the Mount Lofty Ranges in the Adelaide Hills. And my siblings and I were acutely aware of the responsibilities we had as custodians of that piece of land. My grandparents and my parents always told us that we had an obligation to look after this land and make sure it was in better and more productive condition than before. And I think that's a principle that can be adopted by everyone, most certainly by governments. Although, of course, there'll be very differing views as to how we can achieve that, but contestability is good. Now, scientists have said forever that the way to sustain humanity is to ensure that there's clean air and clean water and clean food. And that sets a benchmark. There are other principles, but let's start with those three. That sets a benchmark against which we can judge the actions of others. It's a way to measure. You know, philanthropy can and does play a vital role in our goal of preserving our planet. It's absolutely vital for those who are advocating for a better world, because there's nothing more powerful than the personal or private resources. And it sends a very powerful message to the community at large, but also to the policymakers, the legislators. But it's not just about sending a powerful message, because we need resources to support the advocacy. We need the resources to support the innovation. And so philanthropy is absolutely crucial to the preservation of our environment. And while we often think some of these challenges are utterly insurmountable, and then we naturally question, well, the actions of one person can't affect change. Believe me, an individual can make a difference to the life of their times. I have seen so many examples. I've witnessed it, where one person's passion and effort and the resources and the hard work that they put into it has achieved extraordinary things across a wide range of fields. And sure, the scale of some challenges, take climate change, appears overwhelming. But you know, break it down. Smaller pieces are achievable, and that builds the whole.
Tonight we heard from three outstanding researchers, conservationists, environmentalists, activists, three extraordinary Australians. They showed ambition, courage, a preparedness to take risks, although David said calculated, but risks, and a willingness to challenge the status quo. What we need to do is follow their example, back what they're doing, and this will build the movement. I really want to congratulate Lawrence and 10 by 10. Apart from the fact that Izzy said I had to come, I really believe in what you're doing. And I think that this is the step that's needed to build an overwhelming level of support for change. We have to challenge the status quo. We have one planet, we have one opportunity, we have to do it, not only for ourselves, but for the future of our planet. Congratulations to everyone involved in this event. It's outstanding.
Thank you, Honourable Bishop, for your inspiring and thoughtful speech. We hope that you all enjoyed our wonderful speeches tonight and that you walk away with the satisfaction that you've helped to create a sustainable environmental and social change. I will now call on Ms. Nicole Andrews to give a vote of thanks. Nicole is Head of City for 10 by 10 Adelaide, and our committee has been glad to have her guidance, direction and motivation as we plan for this event. Welcome, Nicole.
What an incredible night. First and foremost, I'd like to acknowledge the following guests this evening. Our shark for good, the Honourable Julie Bishop. The Honourable David Spears, MP. Professor Carolyn McMillan, AO. Mr. Bruce Spears. Charity founders, donors, our sponsors, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. 10 by 10 is a young organisation of millennials and Gen Zs. What a privilege and honour for us to be joined by senior dignitaries in recognition of our movement to create positive change. Giving is not just about making a donation, it's about making a difference. It's about getting involved in a cause that you care about. As Ella said so poignantly earlier, don't wait for someone to save our planet. Instead, let's do it together. All of you in the audience and on live stream tonight are a part of this conversation surrounding environmental conservation and the role science and technology can play to provide solutions to complex problems. We want to thank you for all being a part of our movement. Tonight is Adelaide's 10th event, and many people and organisations have played an important role in 10 by 10's Adelaide's success. As head of the city, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the following for their contribution to tonight's event. Bendigo Bank have been regular generous supporters since Adelaide's first 10 by 10 event in 2015. Thank you to our family foundations, the Day Family Foundation and the Carthy Foundation for their continued support. Thank you to our supporters, the South Australian Government through the Office of the Chief Entrepreneur and FIX. Regular supporters of 10 by 10 are Lot 100, Yalumba Wines, the Elder Conservatorium Choral for their wonderful performance we heard earlier tonight. Belinda's New Venture Institute, our special guests for donating their time to support our auction, Serene Hannaford for her beautiful artwork, and Professor Carolyn McMillan, Alice Tran and David Rosham for donating their time towards a valuable mentoring session, including the fabulous voucher from the Daily Edit. Daniel Francis and Alex Nguyen for their photography and videography tonight and pre-event, D&G Fresh Fruit Distributors. Finally, all of you in the audience and at home watching us on the live stream, I will ask the following people to please come to the stage to receive a token of our appreciation. Can I please ask Ella Andrews? What a proud, moving moment. Thank you to my daughter Ella, speaking on behalf of the younger generation why the environment matters. Thank you, Ella. Mark Ledson, is he still here? No, he's gone? Okay, all right, we'll continue on. Bruce Spears. Executive Business Station at Bendigo Bank. Thank you, Bruce and Bendigo, for hosting tonight's event. Thank you, Bruce. The Honourable David Spears, MP, Minister for the Environment and Water. Thank you for your words about the environmental goals and achievements. We look forward to continuing this partnership to create sustainable change. And of course, the Honourable Julie Bishop, Chancellor of the Australian National University and Foreign Minister. We cannot express enough gratitude for your presence tonight as our shark for good. By taking on this role, you not only help promote awareness of our cause, but raise the profile and put 10 by 10 on the map in Adelaide and around the world. We are very grateful. Okay, also, last but not least, of course, our 3 charity founders here tonight. I would like them to come up to receive a small token appreciation. We've got Alan Noble from Jarvis, Dr. David Patton. As Laurie acknowledged earlier, thank you to all the work you have done, and it's been fantastic, and it's really put this event, taken it to a new level, and we're just so honoured.
And thank you.
Oh, of course, yeah. Okay. I'm honoured as Head of City to be leading our current 10 by 10 committee who put together tonight's inspiring event. Can I please call this dedicated... Oh, you guys can... Yeah, you're done. Yeah. Off the stage. Who put together tonight's inspiring event. Can I please call this dedicated group to the stage? And while they should come up, I must announce that 3 members are unable to join us. And Tom, who is currently behind this wall here, he has done so much work for us with all the technology and to make it come across so... Yeah, there he is. Hi, Tom. Thank you so much. And to Mary, yeah. So can I please have all the committee members to come to the stage? 10 by 10 is powered by volunteers. Tonight could not be possible without the people that stand with me. Thank you. Thank you for donating your time to this movement and being a part of something bigger than yourself. Katrina Bazanju, thank you for taking on the challenging role as project lead, collaborating with the committee to deliver another stellar event. There's more work to be done. Tonight is just the start of the connections, the ideas, the funding, but we thank you for joining us. Thank you, guys. Thank you, committee. It is our 10 by 10 mission to identify and support innovative grassroots organisations serving our local South Australian community. For this reason, we'll return in a few months from now with the new project committee and a new passion, and we all hope to see you again. Thank you, everyone, and I will welcome Katrina back to the stage to finalise the evening.
Thank you, everyone. So I was going to do the call for volunteers, but we've already signed up 10 new 10 by 10 volunteers for the next event. I'd just like to say thanks again for making this such a successful event. We do have about 15 minutes to have a small party in here. And if you feel like kicking on, we'll be having after party at La Buvette on Gresham Street in Adelaide. So thank you and good night, and we'll see you at the next 10 by 10 event.